Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with veteran Boston jazz guitarist and educator Gerry Beaudoin. He has always had strong ties to the Boston area and New England. He's a lifelong resident up there, and he's a graduate of the Berklee College of Music and an adjunct professor of music at Quincy College. So when he was younger, he was visiting his sister in New York City, and he saw Bucky Pizzarelli and was motivated to buy a 7-string guitar. Bucky would become a lifelong friend and mentor, and he always maintained a very busy schedule on the road and at major festivals and clubs throughout his career, with over 50 club and concert dates each year just in New England. He had a lot of quality time with Jay Giles, and he has been on over 50 recordings and DVDs as a leader, co-leader, and featured artist. So please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
I'm doing great, thank you.
Hey, thanks for letting Kansas City win a Super Bowl this year. I appreciate the Patriots giving us a break.
Well, we've had enough of them up here. We can share that.
Yeah, we needed a little bit of love down here, so I appreciate it. Hey, thanks for taking a minute out. What's your history with Brent? How do you know him?
I met Brent the first day of Berklee.
Wonderful.
In the hallway, and we have been best friends ever since.
What year was that? Was that in the 70s?
70s.
Okay. I thought it said 72. Is that correct?
I think it might. Yeah, I think fall of 72 might be right.
Well, just to give you a little level of relativity here, that was the year I was born. But at any rate, man, it's great to catch up with you. I love Brent, and he's a huge fan of the show, and he's always throwing out great cats that don't get the interview limelight that's deserving of them, and I have every notion that that's the reason why he got us in touch. So thanks for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you.
You bet. So let's start in here kind of at the forefront, and I want to know, you got any albums, projects? How can people get a hold of your material?
I'm all over the place. I have been on over 50 recordings in my career. Probably 28 as a leader or co-leader. I played in the band with Jay Giles and Duke Robillard called New Guitar Summit, which was 3 guitars, bass, and drums, and we were on a Canadian label, Stony Plain, and toured all over the USA and Canada. There's 3 albums of that. There's a bunch of Gerry Beaudoin trio recordings. My latest project, in fact, we just had one come out. For the past 10 years, I have had a group together with saxophonist Harry Allen. And the first recording of mine with Harry is called The Return, the Gerry Beaudoin Trio featuring Harry Allen. And it's called The Return. And the second one, which just came out in May, is called And Then There Gerry Beaudoin Trio, and Then There Were 4. And that's with Harry also. And Harry and I maintain a regular, performance schedule. And we're going to be recording 2 more albums this year.
Let's get back to the beginnings of your life and how all of these music seeds began and spread and got watered. So you're from, is it Waltham? Is that how you say the town?
Yep, Waltham, okay. Massachusetts.
Born and bred there. Talk to me a little bit about your upbringing and how you got into music, and more specifically jazz.
Oh, when I was around 10 years old, I wanted to play guitar. And my mother's Italian, so I'd heard all the Italian music growing up. Mandolin, that kind of stuff. I didn't really play any of those instruments. And my father had Frank Sinatra, Count Basie, Charlie Parker. He actually had one of the Parker 78s growing up. He had a lot of Satchmo. So I had a good and Count Basie, and I had a good listening to music growing up. My father also had Chet Atkins, a lot of it. And he also had Johnny Cash. So I listened to a lot of different good American music growing up. And when I got to high school, they had a jazz band. We had a fantastic director in Waltham. And he's still actively playing now in his 80s. I play gigs with him every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And he, planted the seeds of jazz, that I started listening by my senior year to Kenny Burrell, maybe. And I also, my cousin had taken me to see Roomful of Blues when I was about 13 or 14 years old. And Duke was astonished me. I never anybody played guitar like that. So I had a good background growing up. And my senior year in high school, I decided I wanted to go to Berklee. So got in, and I just never looked back after that.
You know, it's funny you mentioned Sinatra and the Italian background. My dad was born in Brooklyn and raised in Long Island, and I had that background too, heard all the music growing up. And the other day, my wife wanted me to make his sauce. He left the recipe behind, and I said, you know, she said, we need to listen to Sinatra when we do this. And I said, I got the perfect album, and I have it on vinyl. I got Sinatra at the Sands with Basie, and I was like, this has got to be, yeah, you know. So
my father passed away, right?
Yeah.
My brother and I fought over that Basie record. I got it.
Yeah, I got it.
I'm taking that. I'm a musician.
That's right. I got it probably 3 years ago. I got a vinyl revolution, and I got a great turntable, and I got a tuner and all that. I found it for 50 cents, mint condition, and I thought I ran into like the Holy Grail. I picked it up. I was like, oh my. Yeah.
It's funny. My son plays vibes in my group. He and I make sauce together, and he makes my grandmother's sauce that I showed him how to make. And we listen to jazz the whole time. He gets his portable speaker out. He puts it on the counter. We dial up some music, and we make sauce.
That's a marriage made in heaven right there, for sure.
It is.
It is, really. The thing that's synonymous about all of the interviews and all of the cats that I talk to is that Berklee is that fertile playground of beginnings. Talk to me a little bit about what you learned at Berklee and why it is such a place that brings all these jazz dreams to fruition.
Well, when Brent and I went to school at Berklee, it was much different than it was today. It was kind of a sink or swim atmosphere. And a lot of the teachers were pros. The first class Brent and I had, he probably doesn't remember this, or he does. That first class where I met him sitting out in front of the class was an arranging class with a trumpet player named Jeff Stout. And Jeff Stout had just come off the Buddy Rich band. He was on the Live in London record. He's on on that 72 record. Then he came to teach at Berklee. So we had a lot of pros. I mean, we had a lot of guys that played with Maynard Ferguson. Gary Burton was there. I had classes with Gary Burton. I had guitar lessons with one of Gary's guitar players. Right? I had bass lessons with Steve Swallow. So Berklee, and Brent and I went there, Berklee had a lot of amazing players as teachers. And you're on my ensemble class. I played in the Basie band at Berklee. It won them for 2 semesters while I was there, which played all the music of Count Basie. The director was Ray Copeland. He played with Count Basie. He played lead trumpet. So you had a lot of pros. It was a very fertile ground. You were learning from pros.
Talk to me a little bit before we get... So when you went to New York, you saw a lot of cats, but you saw specifically Bucky Pizzarelli, and you got a 7-string. Talk to me about seeing him and how the curtains parted for you when that happened.
Oh, that was an eye opener, because I was going to Berklee and I was playing, little gigs around Boston, that kind of thing, weddings, and learning all the standard tunes. And my sister was at Columbia School of Business. I went down to visit her one day. And I was wandering around New York, and I walked by some fancy hotel. I can't think of the name of it at the moment. But anyway, Bucky was playing there with Warren Chansson on vibes, and I believe one of the great bass players. I can't remember who it was. And he was playing 7-string, and I was floored. And I introduced myself, and we chatted and stuff. Well, the next weekend, I went down again to visit my sister, and Bucky was playing at PS 77 up in New York. He was playing with another guitar player. So Bucky gave me a lesson in the bathroom, and he handed me a 7-string, and he took the other guy's guitar, and we played a blues, and I think we played Willow Weep for Me or something. And that was it. Next weekend, I went out and found a 7-string and kept going. Learning how to use it, which wasn't really that difficult, especially, I got out of New York and Bucky, I'd bring it and he'd show me this or show me that. And, before I knew it, we were playing gigs together, and it was just it's a great instrument. I still play 7 to this day pretty much exclusively. The beauty of art, and especially in music, is that you get the chance to run into these people that influence you. You got Jay Giles' album, and you kind of emulated it. And then later on, you met him, and he had your album in his collection. What's that like to meet these people that you idolize?
How
that
is
was
that?
pretty wild, man. Well, first of all, meeting anybody in the jazz world was always a revelation. Like, you got Kansas City. I met and played with Jay McShann. I played with Jay often when he came up here to Boston. I played with Eddie Cleanhead Vincent often. I was on the road with Eddie. I played in his band. And that's something, I mean, sitting and listening to Eddie and Cleanhead talk about music and the scene and stuff is just an education you can't buy today because none of them, unfortunately, are still here. But as far as meeting Bucky, that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And to have Jay come up to me at a gig and tell me that he had my records was quite amazing. It was a great way to break the ice. I got to give Jay credit. The music, Jay was a good jazz guitar player. I mean, that early Charlie Christian, that early roots of jazz guitar, Jay was pretty good at.
I didn't know that. Interesting. Yeah. So, did you always know that music was going to be your destiny, or did you have other dreams?
No, I was going to Annapolis till my senior year in high school. Everybody was disappointed. My parents, my guidance counselor, the people from Annapolis. They were very disappointed.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: has there been a show that you've performed and you got off stage and it was magic? Like something happened during the show or the whole show, and you were like, "Man, that was unbelievable."
That still happens today. It depends. I mean, usually it happens because somebody you're playing with is so inspiring, and that can happen. I mean, that's happened to me with a lot of people. I mean, I've done a lot of gigs with Howard Alden, who's a great guitar player, and he's one of the guys of my generation. And I always kid Howard afterwards, boy, that was an experience. Thanks, because sometimes he just inspires me to play like, wow. David Grisman, mandolinist, is another person that's done that more than once. Dave is on a guest on two of my recordings.
Right on. What do you like best about being a professional musician?
I just love the music, the art of the music. I mean, to lose yourself in the music, to pick the guitar. I mean, I play all day long. I get up every morning. I get up and I pick the guitar up, and I don't get up at 10:30. I get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock when I'm out playing. And I pick the guitar up as soon as my coffee's ready. I pick the guitar up and start playing. And I just enjoy the whole thing of playing music, creating new tunes, pursuing new ideas, writing new tunes. I've written a lot of tunes.
If you look back on your career right now, is there anything else that you want to do? I mean, when you look at all these players that you've been around, all these albums you've released, all these roads you've been down, is there anything that you're thinking, man, I really want to get this done?
Yeah, I have a list of things that I want to get done. One thing I want to do is I want to make an organ trio record, or an organ record, guitar, B3 and drums, and Harry on saxophone, Harry Allen on sax. I've never done an organ record. I really would like to. I want to do a series of solo records. I've been playing a lot of solo gigs, and I've started doing some solo concerts, which is brand new for me, to actually do concerts. And I'm most comfortable I've ever been in my life with playing solo jazz guitar. So I'd like to do that. In fact, that's one of the projects that I have in mind for 2020. And Harry and I are going to do a duo record, just 7-string saxophone, like Bucky and Zoot Zims did many years ago. So I still got a lot of things going on. I'll keep playing until I can't play anymore.
Nice. I like it. So if you could get into a jazz DeLorean time machine and go back in time and see a musician and maybe even hang out with him after the show and talk, who would you love to go see live and hang out and talk to?
Charlie Christian.
What would you talk to him about?
About how he came up with that style that still sounds so fresh today. Why he picked up the electric guitar. What he did was an amazing thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think about that with Bird. I hear musicians say it all the time. How did that happen? I hear people, after I listen to Bird, now say, how did he do that? And it's like, I don't know. I have no idea how he did it. I don't even know if he knows how he did it.
Probably not. But Christian, I mean, listen to Blues in B with the sextet, right? It sounds just like guys who play blues today. Listen to Soft Winds. I mean, he invented it. created the lines, the sound. So I'd love to hang out with Charlie Christian. And I don't think there's any video of Christian. I don't think I've ever seen any.
I haven't. Yeah.
I haven't. Yeah, I don't think there is. A funny thing, you mentioned Bird. I got a great Kansas City story for you.
Nice.
I was out there with Jay and Cleanhead, and we were on tour. This was when we were on tour. It was Jay, McShane, and Cleanhead were a package tour, and I was the guitar player because I played with Eddie's band. And they were talking about Bird, and Jay McShane actually said to Eddie Cleanhead, he goes, yeah, I remember that time you kidnapped that little Bird man for 3 days, and I didn't know where my saxophone player was because you were picking his brain. Now that was something, sitting there listening to that being said. Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. Why do you love jazz?
Just the freedom of expression, the freeness of the sound. It's not the same thing every single time. But you create something. I mean, I like all different kinds of music, right? I mean, obviously I'm a musician. But when you listen to, your favorite guitar concerto, right? I mean, you know what's coming, right? There's no surprise. When you listen to Carlos Santana playing Black Magic Woman, outside of his improvised solo on that tune, you kind of know, what it's going to do, And that's why some of these guys, they make 2 or 3 different versions because they don't want to get bored. Jazz is just, you never know what's going to happen. You get up there and play, and magic can happen, like you said. And when that happens, it's unbelievable. But even just the creation of music, with people creating music together, working off of each other and what they're doing, is an amazing thing.
Let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into your younger self, maybe within that first year of Berklee in '72, and you can give your younger self advice based on what you've learned throughout all these years. What would be the one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Practice longer, practice more, longer, and go out and play with as many people as you can play with. And it's people that are better than you. Put yourself out in that situation where you're going to have to go play with someone that is better than you or someone that's established. Audition for these gigs. I mean, I had some gigs I didn't audition for when I was younger because I was afraid to. I probably should have gone for it. I was talking to a bass player friend of mine up here. He teaches at Berklee to this day. And he was out a lot. He played with Freddie Hubbard and played with Joe Pass. And he told me that, he was petrified the first time he played with Joe Pass. Whereas it never was petrified of Joe because I never had to play with him. But I certainly knew him and hung out with him. But these are the things you learn when you pass those tests. They give you confidence. So I also suggest to my younger self to have more confidence in his own abilities.
So everything's going to come down to this. Everyone has their perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, students. But you know yourself. You're living your life. Who do you think you are?
I'm a husband, father, and musician. Cool. And an all-around nice guy, I tend to think.
Absolutely. I buy it. Absolutely. Gerry, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. I really appreciate your time, man. And good luck with everything.
My pleasure. Thank you for calling. You have a great day.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Boston, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Gerry for his time, music, and cool. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.